All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today we're looking at comedy and fame, but kind of from a different angle. We're going to be dissecting this super insightful interview Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy, did with Lewis Howes on YouTube. And, we're going past the sold-out shows and millions of fans, and I really want to dig into this question. What happens when the lights go down for someone whose whole persona is about, laughter and happiness?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You
Totally.
have this comedian who's so successful, brings so much joy to people. But, behind all that, there's a real person dealing with, well, the same stuff we all deal with.
Exactly. And I was really struck by how open Gabriel was about, his mental health. He's totally upfront about the fact that even at the top of his game, he has good days and bad days. Even those days when you just want to scream into a pillow, it really hits you that success doesn't make you immune to, life.
It's so great to hear that honesty, especially in an industry that's, all about this image of perfection. It makes you wonder, right? Is this like a new thing, this vulnerability, or are we just getting better at, I don't know, seeing the real person behind the curtain?
That's a great question. And Gabriel being so open about his struggles, it really challenges that whole perfect celebrity thing. There's this part where he talks about therapy, and it was, I don't know, really insightful. He talks about these key takeaways, like learning to question himself and admitting he's not always right, and how, the power dynamic can sometimes block honest feedback,
Yeah.
even when you're at the top.
Yeah, that last one is huge EE, right?
Totally.
It's a reminder that success or fame or even wealth, they create these barriers where people might not, want to give you constructive criticism. So it makes you think, who are the people in our lives who will actually tell us the truth? Those people we can count on for honest feedback, even when it's hard to hear.
So important to have those people, those voices that keep us grounded. And this brings us to another part of Gabriel's story. The tension between his public persona, Fluffy, and his personal life. He talks about this pressure to always be on, to always be that happy-go-lucky guy, even when he is, struggling inside.
Yeah, classic emotional labor, but
Yeah.
amplified because he's a public figure.
Yeah.
Think about it. Don't we all feel this pressure sometimes? To put on a certain face, even if it doesn't match how we're really feeling.
Oh, for sure. I think we all do in some way. And for Gabriel, it's even more complicated because his persona is so tied to his career. He even says he avoids going out when he's having a bad day because, people expect Fluffy. It makes you wonder how much of our true selves we sacrifice to keep up a certain image.
It's complicated, right?
Yeah.
Authenticity, especially when you're in the public eye. Can you really separate the persona from the person, or does it just become part of who you are?
Right. How much is Gabriel consciously playing a role versus that persona becoming a shield or maybe even a way to deal with all the pressure and expectations?
It's interesting to think about how his comedic persona might have developed as a way to cope with that pressure. Maybe Fluffy started as a character, but over time it became a way to protect himself, to have some control in a world where everything feels so, I don't know, exposed.
That's a really interesting point. It's the persona is both a good thing and a bad thing. And what makes it even more complex is that Gabriel admits to being a people pleaser. There's this one line that really stuck with me. I'm guilty of giving till it hurts and giving until I hurt myself.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Really says a lot about people pleasing, It often comes from wanting to be liked, to avoid conflict, but it can cost you a lot personally.
Definitely. I think a lot of us can relate to that, wanting to make others happy, sometimes even if it hurts us.
Absolutely. And it goes back to what we were saying about those people who will tell us the truth. If we're always focused on pleasing others, we might miss out on that feedback that can help us set boundaries, and prioritize our own needs.
And here's where things get interesting. So he achieves what many would consider the ultimate goal, selling out Dodger Stadium. And then he almost retired. He talks about feeling lost, not knowing what to do next after reaching what he saw as his peak.
It's that hedonic treadmill thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
We set goals, we achieve them, and then, there's this fleeting feeling of satisfaction. And then we're off chasing the next thing. Makes you question ambition, how we define success,
Yeah.
what happens when you reach the top of the mountain, where you go from there.
Yeah, it's our brains are always looking for the next thing, even when we've gotten what we thought we wanted.
Yeah.
Especially in the public eye, have these different parts of ourselves. The persona becomes this protection. But like we were saying before, it can also be a trap.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Jungian idea of the shadow self. Those parts of ourselves we hide from the world. Maybe Gabriel's persona is a way of dealing with that, keeping those darker, more vulnerable parts hidden.
That's a really interesting connection. Like, it's a way of controlling what we show to the world, especially when you have millions of people watching and judging. But even with all that, Gabriel acknowledges the good side of Fluffy. He talks about how people react to him with such warmth, almost like they're seeing, I don't know, a family member.
Totally different from the usual celebrity encounter.
Right.
There's something about him that's just approachable, relatable.
very.
It goes beyond just the comedy.
And you can see it in how people share their own struggles with him. They tell him how his comedy has helped them through tough times, how it's brought them joy when they needed it most. It's clear his work has this, like, impact that goes way beyond just the jokes.
It really shows you the power of humor, right?
Yeah.
It makes me think of all that research on laughter therapy, how it can reduce stress and boost your mood.
Yeah.
Gabriel seems to, I don't know, get that intuitively, even bringing his own tough experiences into his act, like the plane crash, the break-in, even reuniting with his dad after 15 years.
It's like he's pushing the boundaries of what Fluffy can be, bringing more of his true self to the stage, even if it's through humor. And by doing that, he creates this space where, I don't know, we can all be a little more vulnerable. It's a reminder that we're all in this together, facing our own challenges and, well, wins.
It's smart, right?
Totally.
He's not just telling jokes, he's sharing stories, real experiences that connect with something deeper. And that invites the audience to connect with him on a more, well, human level.
And then there's this part where Lewis asks about, like, the younger generation of comedians and how they want success right away. Gabriel's response is so insightful. He talks about how a lot of these new comics haven't gone through the same struggles. You know, the years of grinding it out in clubs, really honing their craft. He even says you can tell when someone hasn't paid their dues.
Yeah, it's that microwave mentality we see everywhere, right?
Oh, for sure.
Expecting instant gratification without putting in the work. Makes me think of Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule. That idea that to be really good at something takes a lot of time and effort. No shortcuts.
It's like anything worth achieving, right?
Right.
There's a certain, I don't know, toughness that comes from those years of struggling, those moments of doubt. It shapes you, it makes you better, and honestly, it makes the success even sweeter.
And then we get to this really introspective moment. Lewis asks Gabriel what advice he'd give his younger self. And his answer, it surprised me.
Me too. I thought he was going to give some, like, profound wisdom, you know, sage advice based on all his experience. But instead, he says that as much as he'd love to warn his younger self about things, the bad relationships, the people he shouldn't have trusted, he wouldn't change anything. He believes every experience, good and bad, made him who he is today.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right.
It's about accepting the whole journey, all the messiness, all the unpredictable turns that get us to where we are. Reminds me of that Steve Jobs quote. You can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backward.
It's comforting, you know,
Yeah.
especially when we're going through hard times. There's a reason for it all, even when we can't see it at the time. But he also mentioned something he wishes he'd done differently, something that really hit me. He says he wishes he'd spent more time with his mom, asking for her advice, really appreciating her.
That's tough.
Yeah.
It's a reminder to cherish the people we love, to be present, to, make the most of the time we have. And then they talk about what Gabriel would do if he took a year off. And his answer, it really tells you about his priorities, how his relationship with himself is changing.
Totally. It's not about fancy vacations or some big adventure. He says he'd just focus on his health, taking care of himself. He even mentions how during a COVID lockdown, when he had to slow down, he lost 70 pounds. Just from being home, having a routine, not constantly running around.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right.
It shows you how much our environment affects us, how unsustainable our modern life can be. Makes you think about how much we sacrifice, our health and well-being, chasing success, always trying to do more, be more.
It's a wake-up call for all of us, isn't it?
For sure.
To rethink our priorities, to make space for self-care, even with all the demands of life. And it's refreshing that Gabriel admits he's not perfect at this. He even says he's a master at making excuses when it comes to taking care of himself.
Yeah, I think we all do that sometimes.
Right.
We prioritize everything else over our own well-being. But, admitting it is the first step, right?
Honor the struggle and embrace patience.
Wow, those are perfect for him.
Aren't
Like,
they?
they sum up his whole journey.
Totally. The idea that you can't really appreciate the good without the bad, and that anything worthwhile takes time and dedication.
Such good advice.
And then for his third truth, he says something really powerful. Don't ever think it's not worth it.
Beautiful.
It really is. It captures his whole story. Despite all the challenges, the pressure, the inner struggles, he still believes it's all worth it in the end.
That's inspiring.
It is, and I think it's a message we all need to hear sometimes.
For sure.
We all have those moments of doubt when we question our path. But Gabriel's story reminds us to keep going, to trust the process, to never give up on what we want.
It's about finding that strength, that resilience to keep pushing forward, even when it's tough.
Absolutely, and I think that resonates with everyone, no matter where they are in life. It all comes down to a decision. Like, it's a decision to step into your full potential.
It's interesting how he emphasizes that success, it really starts from within.
Yeah.
And how it's really directly tied to self-trust.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. He actually says, quote, confidence equals trusting yourself.
Right.
And then he throws out this question that just kind of makes you stop and think. He's like, why don't you trust yourself?
Right. It's like, well, okay, let me think about that for a second.
Right.
Yeah. It often comes from those broken promises we make to ourselves, like those unmet goals, the resolutions we abandon.
Yeah.
It's like each time we don't follow through, we chick away a little bit at our own belief in ourselves.
It's so true. And that self-doubt, it can actually impact how other people see us, too.
Absolutely.
He makes this really interesting point that people often see us through the lens of how we see ourselves.
Right.
So if we're projecting doubt, then others are going to pick up on that.
It's like we're sending out these signals and people are receiving them whether we realize it or not.
Exactly.
He uses this funny story about birds on a fence
Yes.
to illustrate the difference.
Okay, so tell me if you remember this one.
Okay, so there are 3 birds on a fence, and 2 of them decide to fly away. How many are left?
Well, there's still 3, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because deciding to fly and actually taking flight, those are 2 very different things.
Oh, that's so good. I love that analogy.
It's so simple, but it really drives the point home.
Yeah.
And choosing is often just, what feels comfortable in the moment, fleeting. But deciding, that implies a deeper level of commitment. Like you're cutting off other possibilities.
You're going all in.
People who achieve those really extraordinary things, they're the ones who move beyond just choosing.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who make those clear, unwavering decisions.
It's like they're not just dipping their toes in the water, they're diving in head first.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to ask our listeners, think about your own life for a second. Are you dipping your toes in, or are you diving in? Are you making choices, or are you truly deciding? It's something to really ponder.
That's key.
Yeah.
And he draws this distinction between those who are successful, and they tend to focus on their intentions, their goals, those desired outcomes. And then there are those who get so bogged down by distractions.
Oh, yeah.
Always shifting their attention. And this also applies to how we view the past.
Ooh, this is where it gets really interesting.
Right.
He talks about how successful people reframe their past experiences. They see those challenges, those setbacks. They don't see them as failures.
They see it as preparation.
Yeah. As fuel for growth.
Yeah.
They don't dwell on what went wrong. They look at what they learned.
Right.
And how it shaped them for this present moment. It's like, wow, what a powerful reminder that we all have that choice. We can choose how we interpret our past. We can reframe those experiences to serve our growth.
It's a choice we make.
So I want to ask you, are you letting your past hold you back? Or are you using it as a springboard? Can you shift that perspective and see how those past challenges might have actually prepared you for this exact moment?
It's a question worth asking ourselves.
Definitely. He says, those who achieve extraordinary things, they have this ability to envision their future, their desired future, so vividly. It's like it bends their reality.
They're not limited by what others see as possible.
Exactly. Like, to illustrate this, he uses the example of David, facing Goliath.
Yeah.
And despite facing this seemingly impossible obstacle, David held on to this unwavering belief that he would succeed.
Talk about confidence.
Right. And it's a testament to the power of having that unshakable faith in your own potential, and that audacity to envision a future that others might think is totally impossible. It emphasizes that we are the architects of our own realities.
It's powerful stuff.
It is. And by choosing to focus on the positive aspects of our future, we can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's about keeping that bigger picture in mind.
Right. He calls it, and I love this, embracing the positive feelings of achieving your goal now to fuel your journey.
Oh, I love that. It resonates so much with, our desire for those aha moments.
Totally.
It's like it reframes goal setting not just as a means to an end, but as a source of joy in itself.
Yeah, exactly. When we intentionally focus on those positive feelings that we associate with achieving our goals, we tap into this powerful source of motivation.
Oh,
and
yeah.
resilience.
And it all comes back to the mind. Like, he reminds us that our minds are incredibly powerful,
Absolutely.
capable of shaping our reality.
Right.
By consciously choosing to focus on the positive, we can create a much more empowering experience, a more fulfilling experience.
Couldn't agree more. It's a beautiful analogy.
He challenges us to reframe our past, to embrace the future with joy and purpose, and to tap into this source of strength that transcends our own limitations.
It's a call to action, a roadmap for those who dare to dream big and embrace the limitless potential that lies within each of us.
And there's still more to uncover.
He argues that every time you follow through on a commitment that you've made to yourself, you're basically strengthening that self-trust. And that fuels your confidence.
So it's like this positive feedback loop.
Exactly. It's like, building a muscle. The more you exercise that follow-through muscle, the stronger it gets.
The stronger it gets.
Right. And as that follow-through strengthens, so does your capacity to, achieve bigger and bolder goals.
Yeah. But he also reminds us that even small steps, when they're taken consistently, they can lead to extraordinary results over time.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. And he also encourages us to, celebrate those small wins along the way, acknowledge our progress, keep that motivation flowing.
I like that. Acknowledge the progress.
Yeah, definitely. He also acknowledges that, the journey, it's not always going to be smooth sailing.
Of course, of course.
There are going to be challenges. There are going to be setbacks along the way.
That's just part of life.
It is. But rather than viewing those setbacks as roadblocks, see them as opportunities for growth and refinement.
So it's like those setbacks, they're not the end of the story. They're more like a plot twist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he encourages us to view setbacks as valuable feedback, a chance to adjust our approach and come back even stronger.
It's like a learning experience.
Yeah. He stresses the importance of resilience, bouncing back from adversity and maintaining that forward momentum.
Right. That we don't have to go through this alone.
That's huge.
He emphasizes the value of surrounding ourselves with a supportive community, like-minded individuals who share our vision, our values.
I just love that. It's like when we connect with other people who are on a similar path, we amplify our potential. We accelerate our progress.
We lift each other up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're creating this synergistic force that just propels us forward.
I like that, a synergistic force.
Right. And he encourages us to, to seek out mentors, coaches, collaborators, people who can inspire us, challenge us.
Hold us accountable.
Hold us accountable. And, even in those moments of doubt or discouragement, Golden reminds us that we can draw strength from our connection to a higher power.
And trust in a plan that's bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
That's a comforting thought.
It is. So ultimately, Golden's message, it's an invitation to embrace a life of limitless possibility.
And it's a call to step into our full potential, cultivate a mindset of abundance.
And act on our faith with courage and determination.
It's about recognizing that we are not limited by our circumstances or our past or, the doubts of other people.
Exactly. And this is where Golden circles back to one of his earlier points, the power of mindset.
Right.
He reminds us that our limitations, they're often self-imposed.
Like we create those limitations in our minds.
And with a shift in perspective and a commitment to action, we can break free from those limitations and create a life that truly reflects our deepest desires.
It's empowering stuff.
It is. It's a call to, take ownership of our lives, dream big, and to boldly pursue those dreams with unwavering faith and relentless action.
It resonates with anyone who's seeking a more fulfilling life, a more purposeful life.
I agree. It's like his emphasis on self-belief, intentionality, focus, and follow-through. Those are things that can be applied regardless of what you believe.
It's a universal message.
Yeah. It's like he's offering this framework, a set of tools that we can adapt and personalize to fit our individual journeys. Defining it as more than just like, money in the bank.
Right.
It's about, having those fulfilling relationships, good health, a sense of purpose, and yes, financial well-being too.
Right. It's about having it all.
It's about the whole picture. And it's fascinating how he kind of weaves this into his message of limitless living.
Moving forward. Don't give up.
Exactly. And he reminds us that we're not on this journey alone.
We've got support.
We do. We can draw strength, and support from our connection to a higher power, from our community, and from the mentors and guides that we surround ourselves with.
That's so important, having that support system.
It is. He urges us to cultivate this deep sense of gratitude for the blessings that we already have.
Oh yeah, gratitude is huge.
It is. Like this practice of gratitude, it can really shift our perspective, allow us to see that abundance that's already there.
And make room for more to come in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are your final takeaways? What really resonates with you the most from this whole exploration?
For me, it's that reminder that we really do have the power to create a limitless life. Like, it's not about luck. It's not about circumstance. It's about making a decision, cultivating that mindset of abundance, and taking consistent action that's aligned with our faith, with our deepest desires.